Economist Duma Gqubule joins me now. Duma, good evening. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. You've written quite extensively on your own cause for a rethink on the independence and the mandate of the Reserve Bank, as well as how the MPC is composed. But we'll share that a little bit later on. I want to go to this question. Not unexpectedly, the mandate of the Reserve Bank was a talking point. The chairperson on the panel around the economy, Mameloko Kubai, said the discussions were not aimed at tampering with the bank's constitutional mandate. They want the bank to be able to intervene in job creation and above inflation targeting. Would it be able to do that? And also, would there be a legal implication which would be needed for them to be able to do that?
Okay, thank you very much, Iman. So I just want to say that the problem with all ANC conferences is that they don't discuss macroeconomic policy, and there is no internal democracy that requires this discussion on macroeconomic policy. Unemployment, poverty, and inequality are macroeconomic policy issues. Now, let me just explain. In 2012, the National Development Plan set a target of 5.4% GDP growth and 11 million jobs to be created by 2030. But Treasury focuses on debt. The Reserve Bank focuses on inflation. It is nobody's responsibility to meet those targets. So what I've been arguing for is that the two most important institutions in our economy, the Reserve Bank and the National Treasury, must be focused on achieving this growth target and employment target. So what I've been arguing for is a triple mandate for the Reserve Bank. They must target GDP, growth, employment, and inflation. So what that means in practice, like the United States Federal Reserves, when they make decisions on interest rates, they must balance it against the jobs. Now, I've read all the monetary policy statements of the Federal Reserve. There is no statement over the past decade and more where they don't talk about their jobs mandate. So we have got the highest unemployment in the country, and we can't have a situation where the Reserve Bank only cares about itself. It is unaccountable, doesn't care about the pain of millions of South Africans, and they increased interest rates by 75 basis points in the middle of a crisis in terms of our economy 2 weeks ago. So what I'm trying to say, so once you have an employment mandate, you balance interest rates, and you'll balance the two consideration, inflation and what you call it, and job creation. And then once you've done that, you'll realize that it's not enough. We must now develop other policy tools to address this crisis of unemployment. And I just have to say that we can't aim a water pistol at a blazing inferno of unemployment. 12.4 million people, 45.5%. So they will realize that why can't what Mrs. Bridget was talking about on the clip, is that why can't we recapitalize the development finance institutions as the central bank? Why can't we set up this state bank and capitalize it? And how can we not merge it with the government's African Bank, where the Reserve Bank already has a shareholding, and the Post Bank, where the government has a shareholding, and you capitalize it? I don't understand what is so difficult about doing these things. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I know. I mean, not only is what you're saying fascinating. I mean, I've read your analysis on this extensively, which you're sharing again here with our viewers. It sounds then like, the course of action that they're pursuing, which is supposed to have the ultimate goal of creating jobs, is not well thought through in terms of its complexity or how it works together with other tools or instruments that as the ruling party, as the governing party, they would have at their disposal. Which then segues, I suppose, quite neatly into the next question, with Kubai quoting or being quoted on the possibility of a new wealth tax to fund the basic income grant for the top 5% of high net worth individuals. And we heard from Business last week that this would not be a good idea, and while it would take longer, the best way was really to broaden the tax base first, and then to build and to apply that cross class. But here we are then. What is your sense on this creation of the wealth tax, which the ANC projects north of 160 billion rand being raised through this?
Okay, let me just explain that I'm really happy that the penny has dropped for the government. we have won this debate around the basic income grant. One way or the other, the government has agreed to this basic income grant, but all the debate is shifting now. They're trying to limit the number of beneficiaries and try and make it an unemployment grant, but that's another battle that we're going to continue fighting about. Now, in terms of the wealth tax, and I think most normal South Africans agree that there has to be a wealth tax, but we have to explain to people is that it's not like you wake up today and tomorrow you have a wealth tax and you have 160 billion rands. So it's not as simple as that. It's likely to be phased in over a number of years. And there have been, Iman, more than 20 reports on how to implement this basic income grant. The wealth tax was only one of many recommendations. In terms of my work that I'm doing, and we have develop other alternatives of financing this basic income grant. People need to understand that it partly pays for itself. When the basic income grant, people spend it, there's VAT that comes to government, there's a stimulus effect, money comes back to government, they have more tax revenues than they would have had without the basic income grant. And according to my estimates, about 50 to 60%, and there's a clawbacks from existing taxpayers. So 50 to 60% of the money would come back from the government. But I have to mention, the basic income grant on its own, it must be accompanied with a whole range of other interventions that are going to completely transform this economy of South Africa. Yeah.
Just a quick one on this one, and it's a subject that comes up, ever so often, the issue of the shareholding of the Reserve Bank, given, as we heard in this conference, that some delegates raised the, quote, historical anomaly of private shareholding, arguing that it compromised how the bank is perceived. It's not a new question, but just share with us the nature of the shareholding and the fact that those shareholders as well would have no influence or say on the decisions of the MPC.
Yeah, people must understand that the only reason for this resolution is that it's an anomaly. It's not meant to change the mandate. So the ownership, the independence, the mandate of the Reserve Bank are separate issues. But the ANC must stop lying to its members. It will not cost a lot of money to nationalize the Reserve Bank. According to the calculations I did quite a few while ago, you could give a premium to the shareholders. It would still cost as much as a house in Hyde Park, So it's one of the easiest things to do. So you make an offer to the shareholders with a premium, and then the shareholders can accept it. If they don't accept it, you go back to your branches and say, we tried our best, but you can't not have an explanation, a proper explanation to the branch. And I saw the finance minister on another channel admitting that they haven't explained this thing properly. So you can't have a situation where ANC resolutions are suggestions, because the whole credibility of everything, internal democracy, it is a disrespecting of the internal democracy of the ANC, because people, conference after conference, are asking for the nationalization, and you don't offer an explanation as to why you do not want to nationalize the Reserve Bank. I heard the head of the ETC saying they need to do studies, but there's no time. The studies, the nationalization happened decades ago in the 30s and the 40s. So the valuations that were used at that time, they're irrelevant today. And all central banks, except 7 in the world, are nationalized. It's one of the easiest things to do. I don't understand why they can't do it here.
And it has been on the book since 2017, let us not forget. Duma, thank you very much for your analysis. As always, we appreciate you, Duma Gqubule, chatting to us on the outcomes of the Economic Transformation Committee commissions at the ANC's Policy Conference.